Hello and welcome to the Your Financial Pharmacist Real Estate Investing Podcast, a show all about empowering pharmacists to achieve financial freedom through real estate investing. I'm Nate Hedrick, and each week, my co-host David Bright and I explore stories from pharmacists all over the country who are achieving their real estate goals while maintaining a meaningful career in pharmacy. Whether you're a first-time investor or a seasoned pro, we're here to provide education and inspiration about the world of real estate. Please note, this podcast is intended for educational purposes only and should not be considered financial or investment advice. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks. How you doing, man?
Good. We're into the new year. I know we're both diving into our goals and our plans for 2023. You and I were just talking before we hit record about that, and it's a fun time.
Yeah, it's fun too to look back on those prior year goals. I know we were talking about, looking back, reflecting on 2022, but even going back further, like some of those first goals in a new category and that really tangible starting point, like that can be a really fun kind of piece to look back on and see that turning point and how things all get started, right? And so today's guest had one of those moments. I thought it was just a really fun thing to share as like a kickoff 2023 kind of inspiration.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's exactly why we had Michael Lee on the show. Michael is a pharmacist and a newly minted real estate agent out in Seattle area, Seattle, Washington. And he reached out to me on LinkedIn a while back and just said, "Hey, like I'm a pharmacist. I got my real estate license. Like I'd love to chat." And I'm like, "Great, this sounds awesome. Let's connect." And just his story is super inspiring. And the way that he has taken what I think is intimidating for a lot of people, and that is starting something new, and he's just taking it with an awesome attitude and an awesome mindset. And so I wanted to bring him on to share some of that. I think his story really comes through.
Yeah. And I know that there's probably several people listening that are not thinking about becoming realtors. And I think that that's okay. I think he has so many nuggets in here that translate really well to whatever that new thing is that you're thinking about starting. And maybe it's getting into real estate investing in general. Maybe it's pivoting to from single family to apartments or to short-term rentals or to looking at something different within real estate investing. That first piece, that first step can feel really intimidating. And so not only does Michael's story bring some inspiration behind that, but he provides some really good nuggets about getting out of your comfort zone and mitigating for some of that just rookie status and what you can do to overcome that and be successful despite being the rookie.
Yeah, a really relevant episode if you're considering any new venture this year, right? If one of your 2023 goals is to do something you've never done before, which hopefully it's on there, right? This is a great mindset kind of an episode to listen to. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as much as we enjoyed talking with Michael. And with that, we'll just take you right to it. Enjoy. Hey, Michael, welcome to the show.
Hello.
So glad you could join us, man. Again, it's been a while since you first reached out, a couple months, in fact, and I loved your story. I loved your ability to be putting yourself out there, and I just thought this was going to be a great chance for you to come on the show, share some of what you've been up to. So appreciate it.
Yeah, no, definitely no problem. And I should say a very similar set of thanks, for, being receptive and responding back to my outreach. It was a straight cold call. And so I appreciate you taking the time, conversing with me.
I commend the chutzpah. It was awesome. And again, anytime somebody's going to reach out to me and is in pharmacy and real estate, like I'm taking that phone call. So no big deal. So why don't we jump right in, Michael? Tell us a little bit about your pharmacy story. Give us some background.
Sure thing. So I feel my pharmacy professional career is relatively short, so we can really go and start back at. I graduated from Washington State University College of Pharmacy in 2020, then did a residency thereafter with Kaiser Permanente, Washington. It was kind of a blended managed care slash ambulatory care residency program, and so once I wrapped that up in June of 2021, I was fortunate a few months afterwards, came on board with Multicare Health Systems, and I work as their managed care pharmacist.
Very nice. And tell us about your real estate journey as well.
Yeah, no problem. So when it comes to my real estate journey, that has been a relatively new addition to my pharmacy career. Let's see, I got licensed back a little earlier of this year. And then I actually didn't join with a broker until around, let's say, September or October. And then from there on, I actually just closed on the very first deal back in mid November.
Yeah, congrats. And we got to talk about that quite a bit. And it made me realize you are somebody who perfectly exemplifies what so many of our audience is trying to do. And that is taking something that they've learned a lot about, right? We've gathered a lot of knowledge about this subject, but don't have a ton of experience, real estate investing, being a real estate agent, whatever that is, and they're trying to apply that knowledge and gain that experience. And you're doing it. You're living it right now. And so I want to talk about that, get your perspective, and see what it's like to go through that, because I think that applies to so many people in our audience and so many people that listen to the show. So take us through that initial decision to jump into being a real estate. Like, to being an agent, where did that come from?
Honestly, it was just the thought of all around the whole I think what the YFP podcast really discussed about and regarding around student loans. You come out graduating from pharmacy school with coming out making and earning six figures, but at the same time coming out and having a six-figure debt, and more oftentimes it being larger than what we earn. And so I think I've always just knowing that ahead of time have been just trying to wrap my mind around of, well, I couldn't rely on just a single source income. And I was trying to think, okay, well, what are other streams of income that I could potentially generate to essentially diversify myself, and ultimately be able to tackle down that crazy student loans. And so real estate has been something that's just surfaced and circled around in my life, something that my friends and family like to talk about at the dinner table. And I thought I have a couple of peers of mine that are doing real estate full time. And so when I was trying to look at other ways of, oh, well, what can I do in addition to being a pharmacist, and maybe I could do something on the side. They mentioned about why not being a real estate agent. You can do it part time. You can determine how you'd like to do your business. And so I just had the kind of just go for it attitude and decided to pursue that route.
So I really like what you mentioned about the friends and family kind of talking about real estate, some of that. I'm curious how that network kind of either helps you along or may have been a little intimidating, or like what are you doing? I thought you just got licensed as a pharmacist. Now you want to get licensed in something else. What's going on?
Yeah, no, great question. I think a lot of it has just been I don't know. It's just, I guess, luck of the draw, just in terms of whom I've surrounded myself with. A lot of the other folks whom, again, that I've surrounded myself with have very similar, goals in their own life of, whether that's trying to achieve financial freedom earlier on and retire, or just, trying to strive towards a more objective goal of, I want this many units, rental properties to generate this X amount of, passive income. And I think it's just through that, again, luck of draw of being able to surround myself to have that similar alignment, that it's really kind of motivated myself to try to achieve those kind of similar set of goals, and be positioned, to do, kind of the whole financial freedom and setting myself up to be able to have the lifestyle that I'd like, and be able to essentially buy my own time back to be able to do other things in life that, I enjoy aside from pharmacy.
Such an important concept, and something you touched on there that I think I don't want to pass over is the idea of surrounding yourself with the right people that are building you up and supporting you in making a move like
Mhm.
this, right? It's super easy to imagine, because I went through this, and I'm sure there are people that talk to you this way, right? Where you're like, hey, I'm going to be a real estate agent, and they're like, oh, so pharmacy didn't work out then, or oh, you're quitting, I guess, yeah, so no more pharmacy. And this concept of like you can have two tracks or you can do something else is foreign to a lot of people. And if everybody in your corner is not supportive of that decision, it's a heck of a lift to be able to make that move yourself, right? If everybody you're talking to about your real estate investment property that you want to start buying says, no, that's a horrible idea, you're not going to have the confidence to go do it. And so surrounding yourself with the people that actually support that decision, that is huge. That is the thing that is going to make you get over the next hump, which I think is really, really important to highlight.
Yes, no, definitely.
So walk us through, for those that are maybe thinking of the same thing, right? Maybe they're in the exact same boat you are. Maybe they're a year away from graduating from pharmacy school and already freaking out about student loans like I was when I was at that point. and they're thinking maybe real estate agent is a decent option for me. So I know it's different for every state, right? And you're out in Washington, but give us the process. What does that look like for somebody that wants to go and get their real estate license?
Yeah. So in terms of becoming a real estate agent here in Washington, and I don't have the exact checkbox
Sure.
list of all the
Mhm.
things that you have to do, but there is essentially a set of real estate courses. There's two of them. One, I believe that's like 90 hours. The other one is 30 hours, kind of covering over the one is covering the laws, and the other one's just kind of talking about the general aspects of real estate. And so you have to take and meet those hourly requirements, and then from there you take the test, and once you've passed, you get your license, and then of which you go and search for a broker, and where you can hang your license and then actively become a real estate agent. And then from there it's just really, you learn enough from the books, but now it's trying to get the experience and really going through that process hands on to really understand it and learn of it, because there's only so much that the books actually cover versus what's out there. I know in this podcast there's a lot of conversations of real estate, and there's a plethora of things out there.
Absolutely. I think that transition of, kind of knowing about it and jumping in then that can create this imposter syndrome feeling, right? And I see this in pharmacy students all the time. I think all of us that precept students see a student walk out and they've got all kinds of knowledge and they're walking into a clinical environment and they're trying to figure out like, oh man, am I ready for this? And I think that the students are so much more ready than they give themselves credit for. And I'm imagining too that 90 hours and 30 hours, you went through way more pharmacy school than 120 hours of training, right? And so you probably also felt like, how is this enough? How am I ready to do? Like, can you tell us about those feelings and kind of how you got past that? Like, I'm really ready for this. I can do this.
Yeah, no, no, 100%. I think really for me, it was really just accepting things, letting go of the idea of really needing to be perfect, and having that perfection, and then just having some compassion. So, in terms of accepting things, right? Accepting that and understanding it's going to be a challenge. And so, in the perspective of, as a real estate agent, you finish the courses, you pass the test, you hang your license, and now it's like the first thing is, well, I need to get a client. I need to have somebody that's interested in buying or selling their property, and then closing on that deal to get that hands-on experience. And so, just accepting the fact that that's the first step for me as the agent, and realizing that I'm not going to have that experience, and so that's going to be a big barrier for many folks. They might not feel for they're not going to feel very comfortable working with an agent that hasn't had a track record of going through the whole process, and that's very understandable. And so I think, if as long I've accepted that fact, and knowing that in due time, through efforts of really trying to establish a lead and getting that first client, that once I've gone through that process once, and then hopefully repetitively doing it over and over, eventually that track record will build upon itself. And then a part of it is also just the mindset shift, and really just trying to resist this urge to look at and see all my direct failures and being very self-critical, and then rather just really reframing it as seeing it's an opportunity for myself to learn and grow, and just again, just being self-compassionate and just understanding towards myself that this is just a process. It was like that throughout all of pharmacy school, right
Mhm.
there. It was challenging then, and look at where I'm at now. Graduated, did the residency, now finally a full-fledged pharmacist. And so I think, it's going to be the same process.
I love that. And I think something you touched on that I think is so relevant to somebody who might be considering maybe not being a real estate agent, but jumping into real estate investing is that first deal, right? The first client. And you can have all this knowledge, even if you've got some experience, right? You've done a little bit of deal analysis, or you've done talking with clients or prospective clients, whatever the case may be, even a little bit of experience and all the knowledge that goes behind it sometimes isn't enough to get you over that hump of acquiring that first deal or acquiring that first client. And I know you just closed, we just talked about this, you just closed on your first deal, right, with your first client and everything. So walk us through, like, what did that look like? How did you get your first client? How did that conversation progress? Because again, I think that's really relevant to somebody thinking about getting their first deal in real estate investing as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. So for me, actually, the first client was a friend of a friend.
Aren't they all? Come on.
And
That's real estate.
right, right. It's just through
The
the
sphere.
network, right, and this that sphere of people exactly. And so really, it's just been since I've gotten my license. I still hang out with my friends, and whenever the conversation about finances or ever conversations about looking to buy a home, I sometimes throw in that little shameless plug of, hey, I just got my license.
Mhm.
If you're interested and, walking through and willingly to work with a brand new agent, I'm more than happy to help you. And I think my friends, I think they've seen what I've done throughout all of pharmacy school and seeing where I've ended up now. And I think that in itself has in a way kind of showing my work ethic, and that in itself was a track record for me. And that they say, you know what, I think they can trust as me being a real estate agent. I think that has been communicated it out to their friends. And so it just was really honestly a luck of a draw, because this all happened in such a short time frame, getting with a broker back in like September, October, and so that was like maybe only a few weeks at best. Like that, I finally got the first client already.
I think it's awesome. That's faster than I did. I'll tell you that. But it's amazing how much putting yourself out there, right? Just starting to talk about those things can start to change the outcomes that you're seeing. And again, I think that's really similar in real estate investing. If I tell people I'm an investor and I start talking that way, even if I've not bought, but I'm deal analyzing, I've got the money setting aside, I'm thinking of myself as an investor, you're thinking of yourself as an agent, all of a sudden those conversations start to shift. And it's not like you're peppering every conversation with, hey, I'm an agent, you should buy with me. But if you just start putting that in there more often, it's amazing the output that's coming back to you once you start putting that out there. So I think that's great. I love that.
Yeah, I'm curious too. One of the things that I see in pharmacy students is they need that like phone a friend of like who can I reach out to and who can I get help from and what's that network and so how does that look like as a real estate agent too? I'm imagining that there's other people that you find and other people that you can look to for help. But how does that work in the real estate agent space?
Yeah, David, great question. For me, a lot of it was just leaning very heavily on my mentor. The broker whom I've decided to go with, they have this kind of like how we've, I guess, called it in pharmacy school, this layered learning model where we have everyone that's new to an agent has an option if they'd like to be assigned with a mentor. And so that was something that I knew early on, that coming out and being a new agent, having no clue of really what's the next approach and how going through all the process of going through the real estate forms and going through the whole spiel. Yeah, I figured a mentor would have been the best approach, and I'm very glad that I did, because I definitely used their knowledge a lot as I was walking through my very first deal.
Yeah, and I would imagine there's a cost to that, right? Like you probably had to split a commission or something like that with that mentor, but it sounds like you did that kind of mental calculus and you're like, nope, nope. This has long-term dividends if I give up a little bit now. Is that about right?
Exactly. Yes. So I think it's, having great success now, right? Making sure that the clients that I work with will have the best experience too, and making sure that I'm not the one causing any delays. And so having that mentor to being kind of the second set of eyes on all my work and quality checking my work was definitely very helpful. And so knowing again that over time through that repetition of just going through the process, eventually, I I won't need those training wheels essentially anymore.
Mhm. I think that's a really great thing too about jumping into being a real estate agent with the pharmacist salary as a baseline to that is because there's oftentimes a little bit of a lag in that first commission check from when you get your license, right? And so if you're not sweating like, gosh, I need to put food on the table right now and I need that full commission, you can make that investment into that. Well, I'll work with a mentor. I'll let this play out slowly with more the long game in mind, right?
No, exactly. So it's definitely financially reassuring just having that pharmacist job in the meantime.
So as you're working with this mentor, I'm going back to this first deal, right? I want to know too, what were some of the areas where you felt like, or you recognized all of a sudden, oh man, the experience this person brings to the table is really helpful here. Like I didn't know this because either it can't be taught in school or it wasn't taught in our real estate classes or whatever.
Yeah, no, definitely there were many areas for sure. But I would say, one area in particular was just going through the real estate forms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Once your client, so I was working with the buyer, and they had a property they were interested in, and once we've put in the offer, it's like going through those intricate set of forms, right, and knowing which ones to select, because as you learn in the course, you go through all of them, but it's not like you're gonna give every single form for
Right.
for your client to sign it, and some might not be appropriate. And so just knowing which ones to select, and then really being careful with reading the language that is written on those contracts and making sure that you're going through it correctly with the client, and then really just going through that whole process of communicating back and forth with the other agent. And so that has definitely been one area where I leaned very heavily on with my mentor.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember the same thing. I remember sitting down with somebody in my brokerage office for my first deal, and I was like, okay, I know I have to use this 9-page document. I don't know how to do it exactly. Can you walk me through this? Because this is the thing my client is relying on me for, and I need help. Like I completely remember that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I think one of the other parallels to that is in the real estate investing space. A lot of people get into real estate investing, buying their first long-term rental or something like that in a team approach, right? Where someone that's new may go alongside someone that's got a little bit of experience, and you learn some of those lessons just by going through it. And I think that's a little bit of this knowledge versus experience piece as well, right? Because you could argue, well, maybe if it was more than 120 hours, you might learn more, but there's still some things that you just learn really well and sink in really well, kind of just in the trenches of doing it, right? And if you didn't have clients that asked you questions that you weren't expecting, you might not have even thought to go dig that up. But by getting those questions on the fly, you reach out, you learn the thing in the investing space. Is this house a good option, or what can we do to maximize this house? And the experienced eyes of someone that's gone before you can really help to pull that out. So I think that team aspect can be really powerful in whether it's real estate investing or it sounds like also being a real estate agent.
Yeah, I'm curious too. As you went through that first deal, again, just to echo what David was talking about and how important that team is, were there members of that team that either you brought or that your mentor brought, or that you're like, man, I got to add this person. I better go interview 3 contractors real fast. Like, what did that look like? Or were there people that you kind of just scrambled to kind of bring into the fold, or were they already there?
No, to be honest, it was, I think, more on that scramble approach. I don't feel my network is that large yet, and so, and I guess I have to be really thankful for just at least some folks around, that whom I've known that made some suggestions of where I could start reaching out to, and it just really, all I did was Googled out if I had to look for like a
Mhm.
sewer. For example, I had to look for a sewer inspection because there was no sewer inspection that was done, and so we had to look for a sewer inspector. And so it was, Google sewer inspection, and then just going through the list, calling everybody, and just asking about how do they provide the service, what were their quoted amounts, and then just kind of going through all of that, and then presenting it all those options to the client so that way they hopefully had all the information they need to make the informed decision on what they felt was best for them.
That's been my experience as well, is that a lot of times you're not building this massive deck of people in the background and then waiting for the first client to show up. You're like, oh, I need a roofer. Okay, let me go talk to 5 people that know a really good roofer, and then I'll help narrow it down. And then I'm going to present these 3 great options to my client and let them make the one that on that decision, right? And again, it's so applicable to a lot of other areas. You don't have to know everything before you get started, right? You don't have to jump into real estate investing and say, I've got
Mhm.
13 contractors in my Rolodex and I know 2 different agents. Like, just you can figure out this stuff on the fly. It's okay. You can still have success doing it that way. I think that's really relevant and worth noting.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've been bookmarking everybody whom I've met and I've worked with and had a great, interaction with. That was always marked on my phone, and just like making sure that if I ever need them in the future, that I have somebody now that I can go back and work with. And I'm sure over time that listing will grow bigger.
Pretty soon you'll be the guy that
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, I'm in this new agent. Do you have a good plumber?" And you're like, "Yeah, I
Yeah.
got 4. Here you go."
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Michael, I want to get your take on our 3 final infusion questions we ask every guest on the show with a little bit of a twist here, and just get your take on these. So the first one is, what's one tangible strategy that you use to make sure that your investing or your real estate work works hand in hand with your career as a pharmacist?
So great question, Nate. I think one thing that I've been always doing is just having that open communication and just being upfront and honest right at the go.
Mm,
And so, when it comes to real estate work as being an agent, I do have to acknowledge the fact that to my clients that I am working full time job still, and that the real estate agent work is part time,
mm,
and knowing that I do have my working hours and I should respectful with that. And so that so far has been the approach. And I do know there has been an experience where a client was just not interested in it because I didn't have that full day
mhm.
available to them. But fortunately, the client I still ended up with a client in the end that was open to my restricted hours. And so I think that's just really the approach. Is just having that open communication.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, particularly when there's a lot of buyers out there that have the same restricted hours that you have as a pharmacist. And so it's not always the deal breaker that I think a lot of people think it is. So, second question is, what's one resource that's been most helpful to you in your real estate journey, whether that's a book, podcast, person, author, website, whatever that would be?
Oh man, just to pinpoint down to one resource, I'll say is quite the challenge. But I mean, really, and I just really want to just say that I wanted to acknowledge the YFP podcast overall. I've been listening to it since my fourth year of pharmacy school, and I think a lot of that has been a really strong learning experience for me because it covers so many things, whether it's talking about student loan debt, or if it's talking about taxes, or if it's talking about real estate investing in general. And I think because of that, just hearing other people's experiences and just really how they've been able to do it has been very motivational and inspirational. And just having that same thought of, if others can do it, I think I can do it as well.
Well, we really appreciate that. That's nice. Only a couple people have mentioned us as the resource, so thank you, Michael. That means a lot. All right, then the last question on here. What's one piece of advice you'd give to a pharmacist contemplating a start in real estate investing or being a real estate agent?
I think, I think the approach is just going out there and doing it, having that open mind, and just go for it. I think, recognize what your overall end goal is, and think about what works and fits best for you
Mm,
as the individual. And then once you've kind of set your mind on it, I think just go for it, right? Don't stall yourself and try and provide yourself saying I don't know enough. I think it's just a matter of just going out there, and then just through the trial and error, eventually you'll learn it and be knowledgeable in it, and you'll be able to succeed in what you want to do.
great.
I love it. If people want to reach out and talk more, if they need an agent where you are, where can people find you?
Yeah, I can best be reached on my LinkedIn. My LinkedIn account is where I'm most active, and you can message me there anytime, and I'll reply right back.
Perfect. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes. And again, if you need an agent out in Washington, Seattle area specifically, we got Michael Lee in the network now. So appreciate you guys being part of it. And again, just appreciate your time on the show, Michael. Again, I think I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of them are scared when they're new that they don't have experience, they don't have value to bring to people because they don't have a lot of experience. They haven't been doing things for a long time. I think that is not the case at all. There is a ton of value to be had right in that space where you're brand new at something, because that's when you're soaking up the most knowledge and you're living through it. You're doing the thing that everybody wants to be doing. You're just one step ahead of everybody else. And I think that's really valuable. So we seriously appreciate you coming on. sharing that knowledge, sharing that experience, and just giving some people some inspiration about what they could do and how they could move forward.
Yes. And thank you for inviting me onto the show. I'm very glad.
Definitely.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. If you like what you heard on today's show, please leave us a review and subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. If you have a question, know someone that would make a good guest, or want to connect with Nate or David, head on over to yfprealestate.com and join the growing YFP Real Estate Investing Facebook group. As we conclude this week's episode of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this podcast. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of your financial pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the YFP Real Estate Investing Podcast. Have a great rest of your week.